Go ahead and call the meeting to order. This is a Buckhannon television cable board meeting. It is just after 6:30. We're in council chambers. It is Wednesday, September 30th, 2020. Typically with all of our meetings, we always observe a moment of silence and then we recite the Pledge of Allegiance. If you please join me in a moment of silence right now, we'll begin our meeting. Thank you very much. Tim, we'll let you do the honors and lead us in the pledge, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Mr. Recorder, how would you like to proceed? Do you want to under recognized guests, you want to go ahead and let folks speak, or do we want to move down through and open up the two issues under strategic issues for discussion and let it go with that?
Well, right now we have one person on the phone, I believe, is all that called in to speak, or I'll ask if she called in to speak. Margaret Balcher, did you would like to speak?
Do I need to speak? I sent in a detailed
Okay.
of my issues.
Okay, that's fine. We have that copy, and we'll refer to it here shortly. Anyone else on the phone that would like to address the board? And no one is in chambers that I can see that's here specifically to address the board.
Okay.
Okay. All right, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Recorder. Okay. We will. I will provide a summary of some of the comments that we have received via email, via phone call, and via regular mail correspondence here to City Hall. Essentially, the gist is that our current cable provider and internet provider is by the estimation of folks in our community is not pulling their weight. We've got several comments here that service interruptions happen very frequently on both cable and internet. We also have a service issue. When it comes time for folks to receive service at their home, the time frame in which a technician is coming to their homes is it's taking quite a while. There's also a few comments in here that when folks were told to be home during certain hours, that a technician would be at their home. Technicians did not show up during those time frames to correct their issues. We also have issues that we've known about with the local office here in Buckhannon. Ever since the pandemic started, the Suddenlink office on 5th Street in North Buckhannon has not been in operation. Now, we were at first led to believe that the office was not going to reopen, that this was a closure of the Buckhannon office and that there was going to be no more Suddenlink office in Buckhannon. A recent phone conversation with their representative, Aaron Jones, the Director of Government Affairs for Altice USA, which is the parent company of Suddenlink, they've communicated that Aaron has communicated that this office is only closed temporarily, and it does plan to reopen once things settle down in terms of the pandemic. Now, so I don't have any confirmation of that, just by what we're told on the phone from Ms. Jones. But like I said in the beginning, it was believed that the office was not going to reopen. So it sounds like that there is a hope that the office here in Buckhannon could reopen, which could hopefully help some of these issues out. And I know that that's a problem. Folks depend on that office being open to pay their bills, and it's nice to have a local presence of the company here in town. So we can be hopeful that they will in fact reopen. I know that there's also some concern in here with many of the local technicians being out of work, and now that Suddenlink seems to be working with contract employees using their own personal vehicles and slapping a Suddenlink magnetic sign on the side of their vehicles. So instead of the actual white Suddenlink trucks, I know that some of that is outlined in here as well. And I think it's important to note that a lot of folks have been transferred to working from home during this time frame, 2020, that we've been living in. And service interruptions can provide for loss of revenue, potentially, and also could just drain productivity from a workday standpoint. So that those concerns are in here as well. But by and large, most of the comments, complaints, and questions in here are relative to those topics, and that's why we have we've called this meeting this evening of the cable board, because one of the functions, and I'll turn it over to Tom here in just a second to kind of talk about why the city has a franchise agreement, what that franchise agreement means, what it does, what it means for the folks in our community. But one of the functions of the franchise agreement is to field these concerns, and that's exactly what we're doing this evening. This is kind of the first step. Our franchise agreement, as we have it with Altice, is not up for renewal until 2023. The Upshur County Commission has a totally separate franchise agreement. We are not the same, so please be aware of that. If Upshur County Commission's franchise agreement is set to renew much sooner, I believe before the end of this year. But ours in the city of Buckhannon is not set to renew until 2023. We received a letter from Altice, which is why one of the other reasons why we're having this meeting now is they've expressed interest in wanting to renew our service agreement, our contract agreement with, our franchise agreement, I should say, with them, with the city of Buckhannon. But just please note, as time goes on, that the Upshur County Commission and the city of Buckhannon, we are not the same. We have totally different franchise agreements. Theirs is up sooner, ours is up later. So I just want folks to understand that, and that we're, I know we're the Buckhannon Upshur community, and a lot of times the lines blur between what the city and county do, but we are completely different when it comes to the franchise agreement with the city, with the cable system. So with that, I want to turn it over to Tom. Tom, for those of you that may not know, Tom is our city's legal counsel. He is our city attorney, and he's also a member of the cable board. I'm going to let Tom kind of set the table for why we have the agreement and what the agreement means and what it does for our community.
Sure, thanks, Mayor.
Sure, yeah, go ahead. We're far enough apart.
Far enough apart. Just a little muffled with this on. Cable services in the city of Buckhannon and really anywhere are governed by a number of different legal structures. The base one is the federal Cable Act, which is what sets the table for franchise agreements nationwide and sets certain standards. In addition to the federal law, there is a state Cable Television Systems Act. That's Chapter 24D of the West Virginia Code. That sets out West Virginia's standards with respect to how cable systems in the state operate, how they receive their initial franchises, and then go through renewal processes, which is what we're talking about here. In addition to that, the Public Service Commission of West Virginia has published about 90 pages worth of regulations with respect to how cable systems have to operate, how franchises are granted and renewed. We have to operate, the city of Buckhannon, through its cable television board, has to operate within the parameters of those three legal structures: the Federal Cable Act, the State Cable Television Systems Act, and the Public Service Commission regulations. The reason that we have a franchise is that the federal law establishes that in order for the cable system to be able to use public rights of way, we have to have a franchise agreement with the cable system. In return, the city, or the franchising authority, which in this case is the city of Buckhannon, is entitled to receive up to 5% of the revenue of the system as a franchise fee, which is what's provided for in our franchise agreement. So for everybody who's out there, understand that 5% of your cable bill off the top, for anybody living in city limits, or at least living within the city's franchise, which is, I think, coterminous with the city limits, 5% of that bill every month ends up coming to the city of Buckhannon to help pay for things like soccer youth center, police department, the fire department, and so on down the line. That's fundamentally, when you're asking why do we have franchise agreements, that's why we have franchise agreements. So that the city can realize revenue in exchange for the use of public rights of way within the bounds of the franchising authority, which is the city. An important thing to remember and to consider in this: the city's cable franchise to Altice is not exclusive, right? Suddenlink does not have a monopoly on cable service within, I can't speak for the county commission and the county's franchise agreement, but at least the city's franchise agreement provides that the city can grant franchises to other entities. We've just never had another one come seek a franchise. So that's an important thing to keep in mind here too, as the situation moves towards renewal of, or consideration of Suddenlink's franchise renewal request, that they are not granted a monopoly under our agreement. As the mayor very correctly pointed out, the Cable TV Board exists to be the representative agency on behalf of the city to negotiate the franchise agreement and the renewals of the franchise agreement, as well as to be effectively an ombudsman or a place to whom people can issue complaints and concerns. Suddenlink, as you'll see, members of the committee, the board in your packet, you'll see where Altice has sent in their formal request to begin the renewal process. That the federal law allows two processes for consideration of renewal. There's what Suddenlink is calling an informal and a formal process, which I think is a good way to look at it. The informal process is effectively to talk with them, to negotiate terms between the provider and the board, and to hold a public hearing at which public comments can be taken prior to making a final determination on whether or not the franchise agreement will be renewed. The formal process, on the other hand, needs to be elected by one party or the other. The city can elect the formal process, or the cable system can elect the formal process, in which you'd go through and have almost like a little court hearing. And the purpose of the hearing would be to determine, and this would be a full-blown hearing with a court reporter present to make a transcript. It would be completely on the record. There would be witnesses who would be sworn in and questioned by representatives of either side. It would be a true process. The purpose of that hearing would be to try to come to determination whether or not the standards of the franchise agreement and Public Service Commission rules and the other standards that are set down by federal and state authorities have been upheld, reasonably upheld by the cable operator. At this time, I wouldn't recommend that the city proceeds with a formal hearing. I'm not sure what good is to be had for that necessarily, unless the board really felt like the renewal was in jeopardy. If the board felt like, you know, that there's a real sentiment behind the idea of not renewing the franchise, then the formal process would have to be kind of moved, carried out in order to establish the factual basis on which that determination can be made. Because the Public Service Commission rules require that in order to decline renewal of a franchise, that certain facts be established. And I don't want to get into the weeds on the Public Service Commission's rules, but this is 150 Code of State Regulations, Title 26, Section 3.6.6. The franchising authority's decision to deny a renewal must be based upon one or more adverse findings made with respect to the factors outlined in subsections 3.6.1a through 3.6.1d of the rule, which go into things like compliance with the material terms of the existing franchise, quality of the service, including signal quality, response to consumer complaints and billing practices, whether they've been reasonable in light of community needs, whether the cable operator has the financial, legal, and technical ability to provide the services, facilities, and equipment, and the cable operator's proposal is reasonable to meet the future cable-related community needs and interests. Those factors would be the object of the public hearing, and I would caution that the standard to find an adverse finding under those things would probably be quite high, because we'd have to establish what they are here technically and then compare them with what they are in other service areas by this provider and by other providers, which is just which would be a mammoth undertaking. So in any event, the committee or the board ultimately has kind of a binary choice to make here, and that is to grant the renewal of the franchise or to decline renewal of the franchise. If the board feels like declining renewal is really an option here, you have to consider the consequences of that, including filling the void, the service void, with what? If there's not going to be, if the board doesn't want to renew the franchise, then what? And there has to be, some entity, willing to take the place of Suddenlink, and I don't know if that's the case or not. So, in other words, and don't forget to keep in mind that the city's franchise with Suddenlink is non-exclusive, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay. Thanks, Tom.
Sure.
All right. Callie, do we have anybody else who's joined the call since we began?
Yes, Dr. Timothy Reese is on now as well.
Okay. Hi, Dr. Reese. Okay. All right. So, I guess we could start with some board member comments. If not to put you on the spot, but if you have any, Tim, since you're here, what are your thoughts?
I know I've read through some of these complaints that are in here, and I've had, I've had Suddenlink since I moved back here back in 2006. So I've had similar things happen with Suddenlink, so I understand some of these comments and letters that we've gotten. They are sometimes a pain. As per service, I live in the city itself, so in the downtown, so it's, you know, I don't have the flickering, the digital as much as some of these comments are on here. I would like to see something like that to be improved on, but I mean, I don't know where we would start to get that done. And same with the raising of the prices. I mean, one lady in here said she paid like $176 a month, which is about 50% about what I pay for the service. So my question, I guess, is there anything we can do to get the cost down in this or not?
We have no authority under federal or state law to regulate rates. No power whatsoever. Our ordinance and the current franchise agreement states that in the event that the federal government ever grants the city any rate-making authority, we reserve it to ourselves and we would exercise it. But that's a federal question that is completely out of the city's hands.
Yeah, I guess anecdotally, I haven't had Suddenlink in about 5 years. I use MicroLogic internet, and I stream TV through YouTube TV, which is an internet-based, but I get all of my local stations from Clarksburg, just as you would through cable. But I realize that, I mean, that's not the reality or possible for everyone. You know, and I've had a lot of comments of folks saying, well, we need to get competition in here. We need to have a company that's going to provide some rivalness to Suddenlink. The reality, there is competition. The reality is that there is. It's just not in the form of TV cable. It's in the form of streaming services. There's Hulu TV and YouTube TV and Netflix and Sling TV, and there's these streaming services that bring you the channels, many of them that are carried on the Suddenlink cable package that we have here in town. It's just it's different. You buy a small device, and I use what's called a Roku, and you just click through your different channels on that. But again, I live obviously in the city, and I use MicroLogic, which operates under a line of sight internet signal. So I have a small antenna on the top of my chimney, and it receives a signal from Tim and Tom Shaw's hill, because I'm in South Buckhannon, and it's been great. I have no issues with MicroLogic. I'm a big believer in that company. I think they're a great provider. I've heard a lot of folks say that Raven Rock is a great provider of internet as well. So there are options. It's not the traditional cable hookup that folks are typically used to. You know, so that, and like it or not, that's the future. That's where we're going as a society, as a country, as a world. It's going to more. Internet broadband is a utility. It is as essential today as water, sewage, trash. It is in the delivery of emergency services. It's like running water, having broadband connectivity. So, you know, I'm in reading through these. I mean, I certainly I feel for the folks in our community who are, you know, dealing with a lot of service interruptions. But I would encourage folks that and I know some have, you know, outlined in here that the other services aren't available where they live. And that's, you know, if you, depending on how far out of town you live, the other services become more spotty versus living here in the city itself. Randy, do we have Joey Slaughter and Dwayne on?
Dwayne is on the line.
All right.
Yes.
Dwayne, do you have any comments as a board member?
Well, I've had Suddenlink for quite a long. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
I've had Suddenlink for quite a long time. I have the 100 meg service with unlimited usage per month, and I'm one of the lucky ones. I have not had any problems with either TV or internet. Now, my son lived down on Smithfield Street, and he did have problems. So, and I don't know how much of it is areas of the town that they're playing, or you know, what may be causing that. I'm new to the board. This is my first meeting. Has the city approached Suddenlink with any of these issues at this point?
Well, we wanted to get through this meeting first and give the public an opportunity to weigh in with what the particular issues are to raise. But I think the next step would be to reach out to Ms. Ms. Jones to begin that conversation.
We're going to provide the comments written in their entire detail to Ms. Jones so that she can read over them and pass them to the correct places.
Well, and it would be, you know, the public hearing that's called for, even through the informal renewal process, is a concern that it was a problem in my house. And the technician, who was a contractor with his own vehicle with a magnet on the side, he was out of Florida actually, who said that it's a problem. It's a problem town-wide, and it has to do with you know, some kind of redundancy in the fiber lines and all this stuff that I couldn't quite comprehend. But my question is, I seem to recall when we had granted, the city had granted Suddenlink a right-of-way across property at the water tower on Corridor H. There were certain representations made or things done at the time to introduce some redundancy on their fiber lines between here and Elkins to avoid service interruptions of that kind. And so for me, I think the public hearing that we're going to have one way or the other is an opportunity to ask those questions. You know, several, you know, maybe 4 or 5 years ago now, you know, they were doing something with respect to a second line to have redundancy on their system. If, you know, what is the status of that project and what effect does that have on the town-wide, you know, signal issues that we seem to be experiencing from time to time? There's also the issue of we granted them a right-of-way in exchange for access to a tower on Cemetery Hill. As part of this whole same thing, when the pandemic hit, they executed some clause. They executed the Act of God clause in that agreement to suspend rent or lease payments to the city of Buckhannon, which are like, I want to say, $1,000 a month, give or take. And I'm not aware, I should have asked Andy about this today before the meeting, but I don't know whether or not they've resumed those payments under the lease. I mean, these are questions that, you know, I think we need to present to a representative of the operator in person.
Right.
And ask for
Can I ask where Frontier Communication comes into play?
Well, Frontier.
And
They're a phone and internet
phone
provider.
internet,
Yeah.
but when I had, a few years back, I worked with them on my apartment building, and had Dish TV was who they worked with. Satellites were installed at the time, so I don't know
That
if that's
wouldn't
still.
be, I mean, that's not they don't fall under
Right.
cable TV regulation.
Okay.
That's, I mean, this is just for a coax, your traditional coax service provider. And there are others out there. There's Shentel and Comcast operates, I think it is in Clarksburg, and Philip even has its own municipally owned system. I mean, there are options out there. But at the same time, keep in mind that in my mind, as an advisor, as a non-voting member of this board, and as an advisor, legal advisor to the city, I think the non-exclusivity clause in there, where Suddenlink does not have a monopoly, kind of changes the calculus a little bit. I mean, the urgency of finding somebody else if people aren't satisfied with the quality of service is kind of the volume on that gets turned down a little bit, figuratively speaking, when the city can grant a second franchise to another operator at any time under our agreement with Suddenlink. So,
Man,
Yes?
Is that you, Tim?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes. Might the board research what other options might be available on our local television stations on advertising? There's Spectrum that keeps advertising, and it's internet, cable, phone system. Have we even inquired of other systems if they might be interested? It would be nice to have a little competition in the game.
We have not yet done that, and this is just the very first meeting to start the conversation. But we can certainly look to our neighbors. Clarksburg is serviced by Spectrum. Elkins and Buckhannon are serviced by Suddenlink. Weston is serviced by Shentel. Morgantown is serviced by Comcast. So there are other players throughout north central West Virginia that are servicing internet and television in other communities. So I mean, we will certainly inquire with our neighboring communities to kind of take the temperature, if you will, to see are folks generally happy with their services there. If they are, why? If they aren't, why? And we can it doesn't hurt to ask what others have and how their experiences are, and then to follow that chain to see if there's interest in expanding into our market.
Right. My question was, on this board, I would assume it would be their prerogative, but to contact these other companies and see if they're interested in coming to this area and what their service would be, and see if we could get a little competition, maybe get some negotiating going on there.
Yeah, and that we will do as a board, we will do our due diligence in that regard. I spoke with the county commissioner in Lewis County, whom I know pretty well, and she provided some information to the Upshur County Commission today regarding Shentel, their service over there. So that's who services Weston. That's obviously our closest geographic municipality, and so I'm going to.
You know what that information was?
I think it's just their franchise agreement and what they, what's in it. So I'm going to get a copy of that for us as well. We have the board members here were provided a copy of the Upshur County Commission's ordinance relative to Suddenlink. So I think it's important that we share information while making sure we understand that we are separate and that we sign two separate franchise agreements. We do just want to make that clear.
One of the responsibilities of the board might be to give us a list of what other companies are available, and then they would contact those companies and see in relation to our contract with Suddenlink, how it would differ and how they could improve it. And that would be important to know the results of that, if the board would contact the companies, not just another city, but contact the companies and maybe have a representative come to speak to council.
Well, we will do that as well, Tim. I think it's important to do both because we want to know how the general public in other communities is, how they feel about the services that they're being provided in those communities. We obviously don't want to engage with a company that's not well liked and doesn't have a great reputation in other communities. So I agree with you. I think we need to do both. We need to research with the companies themselves, but also with our neighboring communities, because we want to provide the best service we want to bring the best service we possibly can to our community. None of us likes getting phone calls and emails and Facebook messages and stopped on the street because internet and TV are not well carried out, the services in our community. So we certainly want to be a negotiating party to and act in the letter of the ordinance to bring the best service we can to our community. So yes.
But obviously, we want input from people that are receiving those services, and perhaps some of the people you're speaking to in the city government. When we have a public meeting, whatever, I would request that they be there to air their thoughts. But I would also like to see a list of people and then be contacted to see what services they offer, and have a representative from them. I know in the past with Suddenlink, Mr. Peter Brown used to come and address any questions we had and what was going on with the franchise and what we could expect. And I would assume that these other companies would have a representative come when we have the public meeting, as well as have representatives from our neighboring communities who might have very pertinent questions to ask based on their service.
Yeah, I agree. Okay. I think it's important to note, too, that tonight is not the night in which we are making any decisions. This is, as I said in the beginning, this is the first step. This is opening the conversation. We are here to receive the input from the public, and we've received a lot of it. It's in our packet, and like I said earlier, we will be forwarding all of the details provided in the packets to our representatives with Altice USA Suddenlink for their review and to understand the real issues going on here. Our agreement is not up until 2023, so as our attorney, Mr. O'Neill, alluded, we have many more conversations to have. We have more public meetings to have. So this is opening the door. This is the first step in beginning the conversation to try to improve upon our services that we're receiving here in Buckhannon and Upshur County. So I just want to make sure that there's no easy. This is not, unfortunately, we can't just wave a magic wand and everything after tonight is gonna be perfect. I wish that were the case.
No, I didn't expect that. What I would like for the board to do is find out what other companies provide the service. We have a list of those. We have plenty of time, as you said, but have a list of those. Work on having the representatives here and the people from the other counties so that they can be questioned properly. But I think we need the first thing is to find out what other services, what list of services might be available for the city.
And that's exactly what we're going to do. We will do that.
I might mention too, Mr. Mayor, that since the meeting began, we received one other comment which we'll be sure to forward to Teresa so she can update it. It came in a little bit before the meeting, 6:23, and it specifically had to deal with telephone issues from Suddenlink. So it was very detailed, and I think we can ask for any future comments that are emailed in. The best way to do it is email it in and be as detailed as possible.
Right.
If they, and I will say that many of the documents that we did receive, most of the correspondence is pretty detailed.
Right.
And that will help us as we approach Suddenlink with these concerns. So if any other customers in the Buckhannon service area does want to send any additional comments in, doing it by email is best, and being as detailed as possible is best. And that email is buckhannon@buckhanonwv.org.
That's correct. I will mention briefly, we've received documentation from Donovan Roby, Rhonda Helmick, Margaret, is it Balser? I don't know if she's still on the
Yes,
line.
she's on the phone.
B-A-L-C-E-R.
Balser, I believe.
Yeah, we received a detail from her. David Beer, Mildred Johnson, Sheila Perry, Mary Dean, the work adjustment center. We received those, as well as
This one is from Trish Bennett.
Trish Bennett. And then I had a voicemail from Nancy Davidson out on the Weston Road. So it seemed in fielding these, there are a few of these that are west of town in the Brushy Fork, Weston Road area. And as we provide information to Suddenlink, that could be an area in which we kind of pinpoint that we let them know that, because there are a few of these in here where they give their addresses and they are west of the city of Buckhannon proper. They're in that valley up Brushy Fork Road, and then out the Weston Road toward Buckhannon Mountain. So that seems to be an area where we've received some comments due to service interruptions. So we can pinpoint that as well in our dialogue to Suddenlink. And that's following this meeting. We will provide this information, as I said, to Suddenlink. We wanted to give everyone the opportunity this evening. We received a lot ahead of time, and if anything else came in, we could include that as well, as you said, Mr. Recorder. So at this point, does anybody have anything else that you'd like to add? Does anybody have any additional comments or questions regarding the discussion this evening?
I want to just check one more time. Are any other board members on the phone? We heard from Dwayne, and Tim is here in person. Any other board members on the phone?
No, we just have Dwayne Squires, Margaret Balser, Dr. Tim Reese, and myself, and you all.
Thank you, Kelly.
And have we haven't received any additional from Buckhannon at buckhanonwv.org?
No, nothing additional since Trish Bennett.
Okay.
Before the meeting.
Rodney, is anybody, do you all have comment availability on your stream? Has anybody commented since you all been streaming?
I'm not sure. I'll take a look.
Good time to thank Channel 3 for...
I shared the feed, and there hasn't been any comments on our share of the feed, but I don't know.
Maybe the internet's out and they can't watch it.
I got 9 people on Channel 3 stream, and I don't see any comments.
Okay, thank you. And we'll echo what Mr. Recorder said. We always want to thank Channel 3. Through the pandemic, they've been here for us, and they've helped us keep our numbers down in city council chambers and allowed folks to participate virtually and watch us on TV and on the internet. So we really appreciate you all coming and being with us every time we have a meeting.
And we want to thank our media, too, because they do a great job getting the word out. Amanda Hayes is here. Monica Zelaznik is here from Buckhannon, Intermountain. So we appreciate their attending as well.
Yep. Okay, if there are no further comments, I appreciate everybody who has called, who has emailed, who has provided feedback about our service, and we will be doing our research, and we will be having future conversations about our service here. And as Mr. Recorder, Mr. O'Neill alluded to, if there are future comments, concerns, or questions, please email those to buckhannon@buckhannon.wv.org or call here to City Hall at 472-1651, press 2 for the mayor's office, and we will take your concern about Suddenlink. So. With that, if there is nothing else, at 7:20, I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Tim motions, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Dwayne. All right, folks, thank you very much for coming, and we'll be in touch.